the blood and the question. What if the very source of life in your world suddenly became a force of destruction? Imagine the Nile flowing calmly at dawn, the lifeblood of Egypt, until it turns crimson, shocking an empire into chaos. The 10 plagues aren't just a story of ancient miracles. They reveal a profound truth about power, justice, and the fragile foundations of human existence. Join us as we uncover how this timeless narrative speaks directly to our world today. Like, subscribe, and stay until the end. This interpretation could forever change your perspective on liberation and divine purpose. Dawn breaks over the Nile, a river of life, a cradle of civilization. Here in the heart of Egypt, the waters flow with an ancient rhythm, a steady pulse that sustains a kingdom. Life teems along its banks, a testament to the bounty of creation. This is the Egypt of our imaginations, a land of golden light and enduring prosperity, a land where life seems an unquestioned given. And then, the unthinkable, a rupture in the very fabric of existence. The lifeblood of Egypt, the Nile itself, transforms, not a gradual shift, but a sudden, violent metamorphosis. From a source of sustenance to a symbol of death, the crimson tide spreads, staining the very soul of the land. The Egyptians, those who believe themselves masters of their domain, recoil in horror. Their world, their carefully constructed reality, begins to crumble. What does it mean when the source of life becomes death? This is not merely a question of physical transformation. It is a question that probes the very depths of our being. It forces us to confront the fragility of our existence, the precariousness of our comfort. It asks, what foundations are we built upon, and are they truly secure? This blood, this shocking transformation, is not a random act of nature. It is the first word in a divine dialogue, a confrontation that will reshape the course of history. It is a sign of judgment, a call to repentance, a stark reminder that even the most powerful empires are ultimately subject to a higher authority. The question is not simply about the Nile. It is about the heart of Pharaoh and the heart of every human being. The plagues narrative has resonated across millennia, not because of its spectacle, but because it speaks to a universal human experience. We see echoes of this blood in the floods that sweep away homes, in the diseases that ravage communities, in the wars that stain the earth with innocent blood. These are not merely historical events. They are mirrors reflecting our own capacity for suffering, our own vulnerability. They force us to ask, why does suffering exist? Why must transformation often be born from pain? And can we find meaning, even redemption, in the midst of chaos? The plagues are not simply a display of divine power. They are a theological battle, a clash of worldviews. The God of Israel, the God of the oppressed, confronts the gods of Egypt, the gods of empire. He challenges the notion that power is synonymous with divinity, that might makes right. He reveals that true sovereignty resides not in the hands of Pharaoh, but in the hands of the Creator, the one who can command even the elements. This is not a contest of magic, but a revelation of true authority. It is the Creator demonstrating His lordship over His creation. And at the heart of this confrontation lies the question of freedom. Not simply political freedom, but a deeper, more profound liberation. The freedom to choose, to repent, to turn away from the idols of power and self-sufficiency. The freedom to embrace the true God, the source of all life. But this freedom comes at a price. It requires a willingness to confront our own darkness, to acknowledge our own complicity in systems of oppression. The plagues are a stark reminder that liberation is not a gift freely given, but a struggle, a journey through the wilderness. As we delve into the narrative of the 10 plagues, We are not merely spectators. We are participants in a drama that unfolds within the depths of our own souls. We are invited to confront our own idols, our own illusions of control. We are challenged to ask, what is the blood that stains our own lives, our own communities? What are the sources of life that we have turned into sources of death? And are we willing to pay the price for true liberation? Egypt's Pantheon, the theological battlefield. To truly grasp the significance of the 10 plagues, we must first step into the heart of ancient Egypt, not as tourists gazing upon relics, but as pilgrims entering a profoundly different worldview. We must understand Egypt not merely as a geographical location, nor even as a political power, but as a complex and deeply ingrained theological system. To the Egyptians, the world was not a collection of random events, but a sacred cosmos, imbued with divine presence at every level. Pharaoh was not simply a ruler, a potentate wielding earthly power. He was considered divine, the very incarnation of Horus, the living embodiment of order and stability. He was the bridge between the divine and the human, the guarantor of cosmic harmony. The Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt, was not merely a river flowing through the land. It was the god Hapi, the source of fertility and abundance, the very essence of life itself. Each element of Egyptian life, the sun, the earth, the very air they breathed, had its divine patron and protector, its own sacred story woven into the fabric of their existence. This was not, as some might casually dismiss, primitive superstition, a collection of naive beliefs. It was a sophisticated and intricately structured religious worldview, a coherent system that sacralized political power, elevating it to the level of divine authority. The temples, the rituals, the hieroglyphs, all were expressions of this profound theological vision, a vision that permeated every aspect of Egyptian society. And it is within this context, within this deeply entrenched theological system, that Moses steps forward, a humble shepherd bearing a message that would shake the foundations of Egypt. He does not come as a political revolutionary wielding swords and rallying armies. He comes as a prophet, bearing the word of the living God. When Moses demands freedom for his people, he issues not just a political challenge, a call for liberation from forced labor. He issues a theological challenge, a direct confrontation with the very heart of Egyptian religious belief. The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says, "Let my people go, so that they may worship me." Notice the profound connection between liberation and worship. They are not separate concepts, but two sides of the same coin. True freedom, Moses declares, means the right to serve the true God, to acknowledge the ultimate sovereignty of the Creator. It is not merely a question of physical liberation, but a liberation of the soul, a release from the bondage of false gods and the idols of earthly power. The stage is set, not for a mere political revolution, a change of rulers or a shift in power dynamics, but for what the philosopher René Girard would call a mimetic crisis, a direct confrontation between competing claims to divine authority. It is a clash of worldviews, a battle between fundamentally different understandings of God and humanity. The God of Israel, the God of the oppressed, the God of the marginalized, stands in stark contrast to the gods of Egypt, the gods of power and privilege, the gods of empire. This is not a contest of magic, a clash of supernatural forces. It is a revelation of true authority, a demonstration of the power of the living God to challenge and ultimately overcome the false gods of this world. It is a moment that echoes through the ages, a reminder that true liberation is not merely a political or social achievement, but a spiritual transformation, a turning away from the idols of this world and a turning towards the one true God. And in the heart of Egypt, on the banks of the Nile, this drama of cosmic proportions is about to unfold. Signs and wonders, magic versus miracle. The initial clash between Moses and Pharaoh unfolds not on a battlefield, but in the realm of signs and wonders, a symbolic theater where the very nature of power is put on display. Aaron's staff, at the command of Yahweh, transforms into a serpent, a striking, visceral act. This is not a mere parlor trick, a sleight of hand. It is a direct, audacious challenge to Pharaoh's authority, a symbolic confrontation with the very heart of Egyptian power. The cobra, after all, was an emblem of royal might, a visual representation of Pharaoh's supposed divine dominion. But Pharaoh, confident in the power of his court magicians, calls upon them to replicate this sign. And indeed they succeed, producing their own serpents. A moment of seeming equivalence, a blurring of the lines between divine power and human manipulation. Yet this moment of apparent parity is swiftly shattered. Aaron's serpent, empowered by the living God, consumes the serpents of the magicians. This is not a mere display of superior magic. It is a profound theological statement. Here we encounter a crucial distinction, a fundamental difference between the nature of Egyptian magic and the miracle of Yahweh. The Egyptian magicians, skilled in their craft, manipulate existing powers, drawing upon the inherent forces of the natural world, perhaps even tapping into unseen, lesser spiritual realms. They work within the confines of the created order, rearranging and redirecting its energies. Yahweh, on the other hand, demonstrates creative authority over all powers. He does not merely manipulate existing forces, he transcends them, creating something new, something that surpasses the limits of the natural order. His power is not derived from the world, it is the source of the world itself. The serpent that consumes the others is a symbol of this transcendent power, a visible manifestation of Yahweh's dominion over all creation. This distinction between magic and miracle, between manipulation and creation, is not merely a matter of semantics. It speaks to the very essence of God's relationship with the world. Early church father Origen, reflecting on this scene, saw in this contrast a perennial spiritual truth. The magic of Egypt appears impressive until confronted with divine reality. The illusions of earthly power, the spectacles designed to dazzle and control, pale in comparison to the true power of the living God. Philosopher Simone Weil, in her penetrating analysis of power, noted how oppressive systems often employ spectacle to maintain control, creating illusions of invincibility to mask their underlying fragility. The initial contest between Aaron and the magicians establishes that liberation will require more than simply countering Pharaoh's power. It requires revealing that power's ultimate emptiness, its inherent hollowness. The signs and wonders are not merely displays of divine might designed to intimidate or coerce. They are revelations, invitations to see beyond the surface of things, to recognize the true source of power and authority. They are a call to awaken from the illusions that bind us, to break free from the chains of earthly power and embrace the liberating truth of God's sovereignty. In this contest of serpents, we see the beginning of a larger drama, a cosmic struggle between competing visions of reality. It is a struggle that continues to this day, a battle between the idols of this world and the living God, between the illusions of power and the reality of divine love. And in the heart of this struggle, we are called to choose to decide where our allegiance lies, to discern the true source of our liberation. Structure and escalation. As we delve deeper into the narrative of the 10 plagues, we quickly discover that they are not a chaotic series of random calamities. Rather, they reveal a profound and deliberate structure, a sophisticated literary architecture that speaks to the very nature of divine communication. Biblical scholars across centuries have marveled at the intricate design of this narrative, recognizing it as a testament to the divine author's artistry and purpose. The first 9 plagues are organized into 3 distinct sets of 3, each set following a precise and meaningful pattern. The first plague in each set is preceded by a formal warning, delivered by Moses to Pharaoh in the morning, by the life-giving Nile. This initial warning is a moment of grace, an opportunity for Pharaoh to repent, to acknowledge the true God, and to avert the impending judgment. The second plague in each set is announced without the same level of formal warning. Moses simply declares the plague, indicating a growing urgency, a narrowing window of opportunity. The divine patience is being tested, and the consequences of Pharaoh's obstinacy are escalating. The third plague in each set is delivered without any warning whatsoever. The silence is deafening, a stark reminder of the limits of human control and the swiftness of divine judgment. This pattern, this deliberate progression, suggests not random destruction, not a capricious display of power, but a purposeful communication, a measured and deliberate unfolding of divine intention. Furthermore, the plagues exhibit a remarkable geographic precision, a systematic targeting of the various facets of Egyptian life and worship. They begin with the very source of life, the Nile, the river god Hapi, demonstrating God's sovereignty over the foundation of Egypt's prosperity. They then move to the land, affecting the very soil that sustained them, challenging their agricultural gods. Then, the air itself becomes a source of affliction, demonstrating God's control over the very breath of life. From the external environment, the plagues turn inward, affecting the bodies of the Egyptians, challenging their notions of health and well-being. They strike at their agriculture, their livestock, their very means of sustenance, revealing the fragility of their earthly security. The atmosphere itself darkens, a tangible manifestation of divine displeasure, a chilling reminder of the power that transcends the natural world. Finally, the plagues culminate in the ultimate act of judgment, the taking of life itself. This escalation, this graduated progression, demonstrates what theologian Walter Brueggemann insightfully calls a measured pedagogical character. These are not acts of divine rage, impulsive outbursts of anger. They are graduated lessons in divine sovereignty, a series of increasingly intense revelations designed to awaken Pharaoh and the Egyptians to the true nature of God. They are a divine pedagogy, a teaching method that uses dramatic and visceral means to convey profound theological truths. They are a call to repentance, a plea for recognition of the one true God, a demonstration of the emptiness of the idols they worship. In this pattern and escalation, we see the divine patience, the persistent invitation to turn away from false gods and embrace the living God. But we also see the divine justice, the inevitable consequences of rejecting that invitation. The plagues are a mirror, reflecting not only the obstinacy of Pharaoh, but also the universal human tendency to cling to our own illusions of power and control. They are a reminder that true freedom lies not in resisting God, but in surrendering to His loving will. Theological target? Gods under judgment. The plagues are not merely a series of devastating events, a spectacle of divine power. They are a carefully orchestrated theological drama, a direct assault on the very heart of Egyptian religious belief. Each plague, with chilling precision, targets a specific Egyptian deity, exposing their impotence and demonstrating the supremacy of the one true God. The blood that transforms the Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt, directly confronts Hapi, the god of the river, the source of their fertility and abundance. His power, once believed absolute, is revealed as utterly insignificant before the God of Israel. The frogs, multiplying uncontrollably, mock Heket, the fertility goddess, often depicted with a frog's head. Her domain, once a symbol of abundance, is now a source of chaos and destruction. The livestock diseases strike at the heart of Hathor and Apis, deities associated with cattle, symbols of wealth and prosperity. Their power to protect and provide is shattered, replaced by disease and death, and perhaps most significantly, the ninth plague, the terrifying darkness that envelops the land, directly challenges Ra, the sun god, the very source of life and light, the center of Egyptian cosmology. His power, once believed absolute, is eclipsed, swallowed by the darkness, revealing his ultimate impotence. As the psalmist would later proclaim, "Our God is in heaven, he does whatever pleases him. Their idols are silver and gold made by human hands." Psalm 115:3-4. These are not mere lifeless objects, but representations of the divine, embodiments of the hopes and fears of a people. Yet, before the true God, they are revealed as powerless, mere illusions, empty vessels, devoid of true power. The medieval Jewish philosopher Maimonides, in his profound work, The Guide for the Perplexed, saw in the plagues a systematic theology lesson, a divine pedagogy designed to expose the fundamental flaws in Egyptian religious thought. He wrote, "The primary purpose of all these trials was to teach that the gods in which they believed were subject to the word and command of God." This reading suggests that the plagues were not merely punitive measures, a display of divine wrath. They were revelatory events designed to strip away the illusions that blinded the Egyptians, to expose the emptiness of their false divinity claims. They were a divine invitation to turn away from the idols of their creation and to acknowledge the true God, the source of all life and power. The plagues, in their terrifying beauty, become a mirror reflecting the human condition, our perennial tendency to create idols, to place our trust in false gods, in the fleeting power of earthly things. They are a reminder that true power, true authority, resides not in the hands of human beings, not in the idols we create, but in the hands of the one true God, the creator and sustainer of all. And as we witness the unfolding of these plagues, we are invited to ask ourselves, what are the idols we cling to? What are the false gods we worship? And are we willing to acknowledge the true God, to surrender our own will to the divine will, and to experience the true freedom that comes from that surrender? The theological problem. One of the most perplexing and indeed troubling aspects of the Exodus narrative is the recurring motif of God's hardening of Pharaoh's heart. It is a theological conundrum that has wrestled with the minds of believers and non-believers alike for millennia. The biblical text presents a complex and at times seemingly contradictory interplay. We witness Pharaoh, in his arrogance and defiance, hardening his own heart, refusing to acknowledge the power of Yahweh. Yet, at other crucial junctures, we are told that God himself hardens Pharaoh's heart, sealing his fate, seemingly overriding his free will. This raises profound and unsettling questions about the delicate balance between human freedom and divine sovereignty. How can we reconcile the notion of a just and merciful God, with the idea of divine manipulation, of God seemingly forcing Pharaoh to act against his own best interests. Does this hardening of the heart negate Pharaoh's agency, transforming him into a mere puppet in a divine drama? Or is there a deeper, more nuanced understanding of this complex interplay? This theological problem has challenged some of the greatest minds in the history of Christianity. Augustine, grappling with the weight of original sin and the necessity of grace, viewed this hardening not as God actively forcing evil upon Pharaoh, but as a withdrawal of the grace that would otherwise soften his natural stubbornness. God, in his justice, allows Pharaoh to follow the path he has chosen, to reap the consequences of his own pride and obstinacy. Aquinas, with his meticulous and systematic approach, suggested that God hardens Pharaoh's heart, not by creating obstinacy where none existed, but by withholding the mercy that would soften his hardened resolve. God, in his infinite wisdom, allows Pharaoh to remain in his chosen state, demonstrating the consequences of rejecting divine grace. Contemporary theologian Terence Fretheim offers a compelling perspective, proposing that God intensifies the natural consequences of Pharaoh's own choices. God does not create Pharaoh's character, but rather reveals it, allowing his inherent stubbornness and pride to manifest fully. The hardening of the heart, in this view, is not an act of divine coercion, but an act of divine revelation, exposing the true nature of Pharaoh's heart. This problem forces us to confront the limitations of human understanding when it comes to the mysteries of divine action. We are reminded that God's ways are not our ways, that his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. We are challenged to hold in tension the seemingly contradictory truths of divine sovereignty and human freedom, recognizing that both are essential to a full understanding of the biblical narrative. The hardening of Pharaoh's heart is not a simple answer to a theological puzzle. It is a profound mystery, a stark reminder of the complexities of human agency and the inscrutable nature of divine will. It is a call to humility, an invitation to acknowledge the limits of our own understanding, and to trust in the wisdom and justice of the God who transcends our comprehension. Freedom through resistance. The hardening of Pharaoh's heart, while a source of immense suffering for the Israelites, may serve multiple purposes within the larger narrative of redemption. For the Israelites, Pharaoh's stubborn resistance provides the occasion for a fuller revelation of divine power. Each plague, each demonstration of Yahweh's sovereignty strengthens their faith, deepening their trust in the God who delivers them from bondage. The hardening of Pharaoh's heart, in this sense, becomes a catalyst for the deepening of their spiritual lives, a crucible in which their faith is refined and strengthened. For the Egyptians, Pharaoh's refusal to yield exposes the bankruptcy of their theological system, the impotence of their gods in the face of the true God. The plagues become a divine judgment, not only on Pharaoh, but on the entire nation, forcing them to confront the limitations of their own beliefs and the futility of their reliance on false idols. And for Pharaoh himself, the hardening of his heart reveals the truth of his character under pressure. It exposes the deep-seated pride and arrogance that lie beneath the surface, the unwillingness to acknowledge his own limitations and submit to a higher authority. The hardening of his heart in this sense becomes a tragic, self-fulfilling prophecy, a confirmation of his own spiritual blindness. The philosopher Paul Ricoeur speaks of the symbol that gives rise to thought, a sign that not only conveys meaning, but also provokes reflection, challenging us to delve deeper into the underlying truths. Perhaps Pharaoh's hardened heart is such a symbol, not a simplistic lesson in divine determinism, but a complex exploration of how human freedom and divine sovereignty intertwine, how the choices we make shape our destinies, and how even in the face of stubborn resistance, God's ultimate purpose prevails. As Jewish theologian Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote, God's self-limitation makes human freedom possible. In withholding his immediate power, in allowing Pharaoh to harden his heart, God, in a sense, respects Pharaoh's freedom, allowing him to choose his own path, even if that path leads to destruction. This is not a capricious act of divine manipulation, but a profound act of respect for the human person, a recognition of the inherent dignity of the human will. The hardening of Pharaoh's heart, in its tragic complexity, becomes a pivotal moment in the Exodus narrative, a turning point that shapes the course of history, not only for the Israelites, but for all humanity. It is a reminder that even in the face of stubborn resistance, even when the path seems shrouded in darkness, God's ultimate purpose prevails, bringing forth redemption and new life from the ashes of destruction. Visual arts, the plagues in paint and stone, the human heart, ever restless, ever searching, has long grappled with the profound mystery of the 10 plagues. These acts of divine power, etched into the bedrock of our collective memory, have not merely been recounted, they have been felt, seen, and reimagined across the vast tapestry of human culture. For centuries, the plagues have served as a crucible for artistic imagination, a canvas upon which the profound interplay of divine power and human freedom is painted in strokes of fear, awe, and ultimately, hope. Consider the ancient synagogue of Dura Haropus, a silent witness from the 3rd century. Within its time-worn walls, we find the earliest surviving visual echo of these cataclysmic events. These simple yet profound images, though stripped of the ornate detail of later works, speak with a raw, unadorned power. They remind us that the encounter with the divine is not confined to grand cathedrals. It can, and often does, begin in the humblest of spaces, in the very heart of community. Here, in these nascent depictions, we see the seeds of a visual theology, an attempt to grasp the incomprehensible through the language of art. As we journey through the ages, we encounter medieval manuscripts where the figure of Moses often takes on the luminous quality of a Christ figure. This is no mere coincidence. The medieval mind, steeped in typological thinking, saw in the Exodus a prefiguration of the ultimate liberation brought by Christ. The plagues then become not just acts of judgment, but also foreshadowings of redemption. The divine power displayed in Egypt is understood as a manifestation of the same power that would ultimately conquer sin and death. Then the Romantic era erupts onto the scene, bringing with it a tempestuous vision of the plagues. Joseph Turner's The Fifth Plague of Egypt is a masterpiece of this approach. Turner, with his mastery of light and shadow, doesn't merely depict the plague, he invites us to experience it. The apocalyptic light that floods his canvas is not simply a natural phenomenon, it is a manifestation of transcendent judgment breaking into the mundane fabric of history. It is a reminder that the divine is not confined to the heavens, but actively intervenes in the affairs of humanity, challenging our complacency and forcing us to confront the consequences of our choices. But the story doesn't end with fear and judgment. The artistic imagination, ever resilient, seeks to find beauty and meaning even in the midst of suffering. Chagall, with his luminous stained glass windows at the Hadassah Medical Center, offers a profound counterpoint to the stark depictions of earlier eras. Chagall's art is a symphony of color and light, transforming the plagues into a visual meditation on the paradoxical nature of divine intervention. Even in the midst of judgment, there is beauty, a sense of purpose, a hint of the divine compassion that underlies even the most severe acts. Look closely at the swirling colors, the fluid forms. Chagall suggests that the divine power, while capable of unleashing destruction, is ultimately creative and life-affirming. The plagues, in his vision, are not simply acts of punishment, but also acts of purification, a necessary prelude to the liberation of Israel. It is as if the very fabric of creation is being rewoven, reshaped, to bring about a new reality. And what of our own time? Contemporary environmental artists, facing the looming specter of ecological catastrophe, have turned to the imagery of the plagues as a powerful symbol of our own self-inflicted wounds. They recognize the eternal resonance of these ancient symbols, their ability to speak to the anxieties and fears of every generation. These artists remind us that the plagues are not just historical events. They are archetypal patterns, recurring motifs in the human drama. They are a warning, a call to repentance, a plea for a renewed relationship with the earth and with each other. Through art, we are invited to enter into the heart of the Exodus narrative, to experience its power and its mystery. We are reminded that the divine is not a distant, abstract concept, but an active, dynamic force that continues to shape our world. The plagues, in their myriad artistic representations, serve as a mirror, reflecting back to us our own struggles, our own fears, and our own hopes. They invite us to ponder the price of freedom, the nature of divine justice, and the enduring power of the human spirit to find beauty and meaning even in the face of suffering. Musical interpretations, from Handel to hip-hop. Music, the very breath of the soul, has long served as a conduit for the deepest human experiences, a language that transcends words and speaks directly to the heart. And what could be more profound, more soul-stirring than the narrative of the 10 plagues? These acts of divine power, these seismic shifts in the very fabric of reality, have found their most resonant expression in the realm of sound, in the soaring melodies and haunting harmonies that echo through the corridors of time. Consider Handel's monumental oratorio, Israel in Egypt. It is not merely a composition. It is a sonic tapestry, a grand fresco painted with notes and harmonies. Handel, a master of his craft, doesn't simply tell the story, he immerses us in it. He uses what musicians call word painting, a technique where the music literally mimics the events being described. Listen to the frantic jumping string figures that evoke the plague of frogs, the buzzing violins that swarm like flies. It is as if Handel is inviting us to witness these events firsthand, to feel the terror, the awe, the sheer magnitude of divine intervention. But Handel's music is more than just a dramatic depiction of events. It is a theological reflection, a meditation on the nature of divine power and the human response to it. The oratorio is a testament to the sovereignty of God, a reminder that even in the midst of chaos and suffering, there is a divine order, a purpose that transcends our limited understanding. The music, with its grandeur and majesty, lifts our gaze beyond the immediate circumstances, inviting us to contemplate the eternal. The power of the Exodus narrative and its musical interpretations extends far beyond the concert halls of Europe. The Negro spiritual, born in the crucible of slavery, transformed the Exodus into a coded anthem of liberation. Songs like Go Down Moses were not just expressions of religious faith, they were cries for freedom, veiled messages of hope and resistance. The enslaved Africans, drawing parallels between their own plight and the Israelites' bondage, found in the Exodus a powerful symbol of their own yearning for deliverance. These spirituals are imbued with a raw, visceral emotion, a deep sense of longing for justice and redemption. They are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, its ability to find hope even in the darkest of times. The music, with its haunting melodies and soulful harmonies, speaks to the enduring power of faith, its ability to sustain and uplift in the face of unimaginable suffering. And the echoes of the plagues continue to resonate in contemporary music. Steve Reich, The Desert Music, a powerful and unsettling work, draws on plague imagery to confront the specter of nuclear annihilation. Reich's music, with its repetitive patterns and dissonant harmonies, creates a sense of unease, a feeling of impending doom. It is a stark reminder of the destructive power that humanity has unleashed upon itself, a call to repentance, a plea for peace. Even in the realm of contemporary hip-hop, the Exodus narrative finds a powerful voice. Artists like Kendrick Lamar and The Roots have sampled Exodus themes, finding in these ancient stories a vocabulary for contemporary resistance. They see in the plagues a metaphor for the systemic injustices that continue to plague our world, a reminder that the struggle for liberation is an ongoing process. These artists, with their raw and unflinching lyrics, are not afraid to confront the harsh realities of oppression. They use the language of the Exodus to name the forces that seek to enslave, to dehumanize, to destroy. They remind us that the struggle for freedom is not just a political or social issue. It is a spiritual battle, a fight for the very soul of humanity. As cultural theorist James K. A. Smith observes, the plagues story provides an existential grammar, a language for naming both oppression and a hope for deliverance. This language, expressed through music, allows us to articulate our deepest fears and our most fervent hopes. It allows us to connect with the past, to understand the present, and to envision a future where justice and peace prevail. From the grand oratorios of Handel to the soulful spirituals of enslaved Africans, from the haunting melodies of Steve Reich to the powerful rhymes of contemporary hip-hop, the musical interpretations of the plagues bear witness to the enduring power of this narrative. They remind us that the struggle for liberation is a universal human experience, a journey that continues to unfold across cultures and generations. And in the midst of this struggle, music serves as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can soar, the human voice can rise, and the divine melody of freedom can be heard. Innocent victims. The narrative of the 10 plagues, for all its grandeur and dramatic power, confronts us with a stark and unsettling truth: the problem of collective suffering. It forces us to grapple with the age-old question that has haunted theologians and philosophers for millennia. How do we reconcile divine justice with the seemingly indiscriminate nature of human suffering? The plagues, as depicted in the biblical account, do not discriminate. They fall upon the just and the unjust, the powerful and the powerless, the innocent and the guilty. Ordinary Egyptians, farmers toiling in their fields, children playing in the streets, servants laboring in their masters' homes, all become unwitting victims in a drama that transcends their understanding. They are caught in the crossfire of a conflict that is not of their making, bearing the brunt of a divine judgment that seems to extend far beyond the Pharaoh's hardened heart. And then there is the final plague, the death of the firstborn. This act, perhaps more than any other, lays bare the profound ethical dilemma at the heart of the Exodus narrative. It strikes every Egyptian home, from the opulent palace to the humble hovel, leaving behind a trail of grief and despair. The cries of mothers and fathers, the lamentations of families, echo through the streets of Egypt, a testament to the devastating human cost of divine intervention. How do we, in good conscience, reconcile this apparent collective punishment with our understanding of a just and merciful God? How do we explain the suffering of the innocent, the pain of those who have done no wrong? This is not a question that can be easily dismissed or glossed over. It is a wound that has festered within the body of theological discourse for centuries, a challenge that continues to trouble the hearts and minds of believers and non-believers alike throughout history. Jewish, Christian, and secular thinkers have wrestled with this profound ethical dilemma. They have sought to unravel the mysteries of divine justice, to find meaning in the face of seemingly senseless suffering. Theodicy, the branch of theology that seeks to justify God's actions in the face of evil, has produced a vast and complex body of literature filled with arguments, counter-arguments, and unanswered questions. Jewish tradition, in its wisdom, acknowledges the inherent difficulty of this issue. A poignant midrash, a rabbinic interpretation of Scripture, tells of the angels who began to sing in joyous praise as the Egyptian army drowned in the Red Sea. But God, in His infinite compassion, silenced them, saying, "My creatures are drowning, and you sing praises?" This powerful image speaks volumes about the divine empathy that extends even to those who oppose God's will. It reminds us that God's heart is not hardened, that God's love encompasses all of creation, even those who have strayed from the path of righteousness. Contemporary theologian Jürgen Moltmann, echoing this sentiment, argues that authentic faith must engage with these difficult questions rather than evade them. He reminds us that true belief is not blind acceptance, but a courageous grappling with the mysteries of God and the complexities of human existence. To ignore the problem of collective suffering is to diminish the depth and power of our faith, to turn away from the very heart of the gospel message. The plague's narrative, in its stark depiction of human suffering, challenges us to confront our own assumptions about divine justice. It forces us to acknowledge the limits of our understanding, to recognize that the ways of God are often beyond our comprehension. But it also invites us to embrace a deeper, more compassionate understanding of God's love, a love that extends to all of creation, even in the midst of suffering. It is a love that weeps with us, that suffers with us, that ultimately redeems us from the depths of despair. The price of freedom then and now, the narrative of the plagues, with its stark depiction of suffering and liberation, compels us to confront a profound and unsettling truth. Freedom, that most cherished of human aspirations, often comes at a terrible cost. The journey from bondage to liberation is rarely a smooth or painless one. It is a path fraught with peril, marked by sacrifice and stained with the tears of the innocent. History bears witness to this harsh reality, from the battlefields of the American Civil War to the bombed-out cities of World War II, from the struggles against colonial oppression to the contemporary conflicts that rage across our world. The pursuit of freedom has consistently demanded a heavy price. The slaughter bench of history, as the philosopher Hegel so starkly put it, is a testament to the tragic paradox that progress often emerges from the crucible of conflict. The liberation theologian Gustavo Gutierrez reminds us that oppressive systems rarely relinquish power willingly. They cling to their privileges, their control, their dominance, even in the face of overwhelming injustice. Resistance, therefore, becomes an inevitable necessity, a moral imperative. But resistance, by its very nature, breeds conflict, and conflict inevitably leads to suffering. The transition from oppression to liberation is a perilous passage, a journey through a valley of shadows, where the lines between good and evil, justice and violence become blurred. The plague's narrative, in its unflinching portrayal of the human cost of liberation, refuses to offer us easy answers or comforting platitudes. It does not glorify violence, nor does it suggest that liberation can be achieved without sacrifice. Instead, it presents us with a stark and sobering reality. The path to freedom is often paved with suffering, with the pain of the innocent, with the tears of the bereaved. This reality forces us to confront the complex ethical dilemmas that arise in the pursuit of justice. How do we balance the imperative to resist oppression with the need to minimize suffering? When is violence justified in the face of tyranny? What are our responsibilities to those who are caught in the crossfire of conflict? These are not abstract questions. They are the very real and pressing concerns that confront us in our own time. The modern ethical debate surrounding just war theory, humanitarian intervention, and the right to resist tyranny are all rooted in this fundamental tension between the pursuit of justice and the avoidance of suffering. The plague's narrative, in its ancient wisdom, speaks directly to these contemporary concerns. It reminds us that the struggle for liberation is not a simple matter of good versus evil, but a complex and often tragic drama, where the lines between victim and perpetrator, innocent and guilty, become blurred. The plague's story refuses to offer simple comfort about historical suffering. It neither glorifies violence nor suggests liberation can come without cost. Instead, it places human freedom struggles within a larger cosmic context, suggesting that while God desires liberation, the path there passes through the contradictions of history rather than around them. It suggests that God's desire for liberation does not exempt us from the consequences of our choices, from the harsh realities of human conflict. It reminds us that the path to freedom is not a shortcut, but a long and arduous journey, fraught with challenges and setbacks. It is a journey that demands courage, resilience, and a willingness to confront the darkness within ourselves and within the world around us. The plague's narrative, in its profound and unsettling way, invites us to embrace the complexities of the human condition, to acknowledge the tragic dimensions of history, and to find hope not in the avoidance of suffering, but in the enduring power of the human spirit to rise above it. It reminds us that even in the midst of darkness, even in the face of overwhelming odds, the flame of freedom can still burn bright, a beacon of hope for a world yearning for justice and peace. The final judgment, the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn, stands as the culminating act of divine judgment, a moment of profound and terrible reckoning. It is a moment that echoes the Pharaoh's own decree, the chilling order to cast Hebrew boys into the Nile, a stark reminder that the violence we inflict upon others often returns to haunt us. The severity of this final plague, its sweeping and indiscriminate nature, underscores the gravity of the Pharaoh's intransigence, his refusal to heed the divine call for justice. Yet, even in the midst of this devastating judgment, a glimmer of hope emerges, a beacon of divine mercy shining through the darkness. The institution of Passover, a ritual of deliverance through substitutionary blood, offers a stark counterpoint to the prevailing atmosphere of fear and despair. The lamb, an innocent creature, becomes a sacrificial offering, its blood a symbol of protection, a mark of divine grace. The lamb dies so that the firstborn might live, establishing a pattern that will resonate throughout the corridors of religious history, a foreshadowing of a greater sacrifice to come. This moment, this pivotal turning point in the Exodus narrative, is not merely a historical event, it is a theological revelation, a profound insight into the nature of divine justice and mercy. It reveals a God who is both just and compassionate, a God who judges the wicked but also offers a path to redemption. It underscores the paradoxical nature of divine love, a love that embraces both judgment and grace, both wrath and compassion. For the Jewish people, Passover becomes the foundational liberation ritual, a sacred commemoration of their deliverance from bondage. It is a moment of remembrance, a time to recount the story of the Exodus, to relive the experience of liberation, to reaffirm their covenant with God. Each year, as families gather around the Seder table, they celebrate as if they themselves had personally left Egypt, as if they themselves had witnessed the wonders of divine intervention. Ritual becomes a living testament to the enduring power of faith, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming oppression, hope can prevail and deliverance can be found. For Christians, the Passover lamb finds its ultimate fulfillment in the person of Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Christ, the Passover lamb, becomes the ultimate sacrifice, his blood marking the doorway to salvation, his death a victory over sin and death itself. The Passover meal, therefore, becomes a prefiguration of the Eucharist, a sacred meal that commemorates Christ's sacrifice and celebrates his resurrection. Both Jewish and Christian traditions, in their unique ways, find in this moment a transcendent pattern, a profound and enduring truth. Divine judgment and divine mercy are mysteriously intertwined, two sides of the same coin, two expressions of the same divine love. The 10th plague, with its stark portrayal of death and deliverance, serves as a powerful reminder that God's ways are not our ways, that God's justice is not our justice, and that God's love transcends our limited understanding. It invites us to embrace the mystery of faith, to trust in the divine plan, and to find hope in the midst of darkness, knowing that even in the face of death, life can prevail and redemption can be found. From judgment to liberation, the narrative of the plagues, which began with such stark displays of divine judgment, concludes with an unexpected and profoundly moving note. A transformation, a shift from retribution to reconciliation, from fear to a fragile hope. The Egyptians, those who had so long held the Israelites in bondage, now implore them to leave, their voices filled with a desperate urgency. The Egyptians urged the people to hasten their departure, and they let them have what they asked. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. These words, seemingly paradoxical, speak to a profound shift in the very fabric of reality, a testament to the transformative power of divine intervention. The Egyptians, having witnessed the awesome power of God, having experienced the devastating consequences of their Pharaoh's stubborn resistance, now recognize the futility of their oppression. They see, perhaps for the first time, the humanity of those they had so long dehumanized. Their hearts, once hardened by fear and prejudice, are now softened by remorse and a dawning awareness of justice. The silver and gold they offer are not merely material possessions, they are symbols of restitution, a tangible expression of their desire to make amends, to repair the broken bonds of humanity. But the transformation extends beyond the Egyptians. The Exodus narrative, in its profound wisdom, acknowledges the presence of the mixed multitude, people of various ethnicities and backgrounds, who join the Israelites in their journey to freedom. This diverse group, drawn by the promise of liberation, represents the universality of the Exodus story. its enduring relevance to all who yearn for justice and peace. It underscores the truth that liberation is not a solitary endeavor, but a collective journey, a shared experience that transcends the boundaries of race, religion, and culture. This unexpected transformation, this shift from oppressor to ally, is not merely a historical anomaly. It is a recurring pattern in the annals of liberation movements, a testament to the transformative power of empathy, reconciliation, and the recognition of shared humanity. History provides numerous examples of those who, once entrenched in systems of oppression, have undergone a profound conversion, becoming advocates for justice and agents of change. The plagues narrative, in its profound insight, suggests that the ultimate purpose of divine intervention was not merely destruction, but transformation. It was not simply about punishing Egypt, but about liberating both the oppressed and the oppressor from a dehumanizing system, a cycle of violence and injustice that ensnared them both. Liberation theologian James Cone, with his keen understanding of the dynamics of oppression, observed that authentic freedom requires the conversion of the oppressor, not merely the liberation of the oppressed. This conversion, this change of heart, is not a simple or easy process. It requires a willingness to confront the darkness within ourselves, to acknowledge our complicity in systems of injustice, and to embrace a new vision of humanity, a vision where all are created equal in the image of God. The Exodus narrative, in its profound wisdom, reminds us that true liberation is not just about physical freedom, but about spiritual transformation, a change of heart that leads to a change in the world. The journey from judgment to liberation, from oppression to reconciliation, is a long and arduous one. It is a journey that demands courage, compassion, and a willingness to embrace the unexpected. But the plagues narrative, in its enduring power, reminds us that even in the midst of darkness, even in the face of overwhelming odds, transformation is possible. It reminds us that God's grace is sufficient, that God's love is transformative, and that even the hardest of hearts can be softened. Even the most entrenched systems of oppression can be overcome. It is a story of hope, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to rise above adversity, and a reminder that the path to liberation is open to all who seek justice and peace. Plagues in the contemporary imagination. In our contemporary world, the imagery of the plagues resonates with a chilling familiarity. We find ourselves grappling with crises that seem to echo the ancient narrative, casting a long shadow over our collective consciousness. Climate scientists warn of impending ecological disasters, their voices echoing the pronouncements of divine judgment. Public health experts track the relentless spread of pandemics, their efforts mirroring the struggle against unseen forces of destruction. Activists decry the systemic injustices that plague our societies, their cries for justice echoing the Israelites' pleas for liberation. The ancient narrative, with its stark portrayal of suffering and deliverance, continues to provide what philosopher Paul Ricoeur called symbolism that gives rise to thought. It offers a framework for understanding our own experiences, a language for articulating our fears and hopes, a mirror reflecting back to us the complexities of our human condition. The plagues, whether understood literally as divine intervention or metaphorically as the painful consequences of oppressive systems, serve as a potent reminder that our world is not immune to disruption, that our comfort can be shattered, and that our sense of normalcy can be irrevocably challenged. The plagues narrative, in its profound insight, reveals a fundamental truth. Transformation often requires disruption. The comfortable must become uncomfortable before liberation becomes possible. The normal must be revealed as unjust before justice can emerge. It is in the crucible of suffering, in the midst of chaos and upheaval, that we are forced to confront our own limitations, to question our assumptions, and to seek new paths to healing and transformation. We see this truth reflected in the countless acts of compassion and resilience that emerge in the face of contemporary crises. Communities come together to offer aid to those affected by natural disasters. Scientists work tirelessly to develop vaccines and treatments, and activists march for social justice, demanding a more equitable and just world. These acts of solidarity, these expressions of our shared humanity, are beacons of hope in a world often shrouded in darkness. Perhaps most powerfully, the plague story refuses both despair and naive optimism. It acknowledges the reality of suffering, the harshness of human existence, the enduring presence of injustice. But it also insists that suffering is not the final word, that darkness does not have the last say, that hope can still bloom in the midst of despair. It recognizes the price of freedom, the sacrifices that must be made, the pain that must be endured, but it also maintains that freedom's value exceeds its cost, that the pursuit of justice is a worthy endeavor, that the struggle for liberation is a sacred calling, and it suggests that even in history's darkest moments, a divine purpose moves toward liberation, not just for some, but ultimately for all. It is a purpose that transcends our limited understanding, a vision of a world where justice and peace prevail, where suffering is no more, and where all are embraced in the loving embrace of the divine. The plague's narrative, in its enduring power, invites us to participate in this divine purpose, to become agents of transformation, to work towards a world where the cries of the oppressed are heard, where the tears of the suffering are wiped away, and where the light of hope shines brightly for all. Thank you for joining us on this profound exploration of the 10 plagues, divine power, and the price of freedom. We've delved into the depths of this ancient narrative, examining its enduring relevance to our contemporary world. If this journey into the complexities of divine judgment, human suffering, and the pursuit of liberation has resonated with you, we invite you to join the Hope in God community. Subscribe for more in-depth theological reflections, and share your own insights on the ethical challenges and transformative power of faith. Let us continue together, grappling with the mysteries of God and finding hope in the midst of life's trials. Together, we can explore how ancient wisdom illuminates our path towards a deeper understanding of divine justice and the true meaning of freedom.